Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. This is the Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Ho, ho, ho!
We spoil movies. Tonight on the show, we're bringing the holiday cheer and proving that Canada does have a dark side with Bob Clark's 1974 Black Christmas. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or join us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And if you've ever thought to yourself, yeah, you know what? I think a fur coat really is appropriate for tracking a missing person, then you might just be hip enough for The Next Reel's Instagram, #PonyPrize, #GuessTheMovieChallenge.
And with that, let's see if Games Master Stephen Smart has this week's winner on a hook up in his attic. Stephen?
Hey guys, congrats to this week's winner at Cotton Science, who guessed our movie was Trading Places from 1983, and they guessed on Image 1. I'd like to thank everyone for taking part over the last year and to wish all our winners the very best of luck in the upcoming draw. We've already started a new challenge over on Instagram, so hope everyone who listens to the show will join us for 2017. So thanks guys, Merry Christmas, and see you later.
Tonight's the night, Andy. Oh, we need a drum roll.
It is the night. We're going to draw the winner of the 2016 Pony Prize. Actually, we'll do a winner and a second place runner-up.
Oh, I love that. I was in the Slack and I was looking in our little channel there for what is coming to the Pony Prize winner this year. Oh, dear. That is a meaty list.
It's a meaty list. Who knows if people will want it, but
this is,
odds and ends and bric-a-brac.
This is exactly what we stand for. Exactly what we stand for here at the Next Reel Instagram. Hashtag Pony Prize, hashtag Guess the Movie Challenge. Andy, how would you like to commence? How would you like to make it appropriately ceremonial?
I think that you just give me a drum roll and I will draw a number out of the hat, and then we'll reveal which week that was of the year, what movie it was, and who won that week.
Excellent. All right. Well, consider the drum roll commenced.
And the runner-up is number 17, which is Stir Crazy from 1980. The winner of that week was At Fegfee. Congratulations, At Fegfee. You are the runner-up of our Pony Prize.
Congratulations, At Fegfee. And now I think we need an even more robust drum roll. Would you agree?
Yes, I would think so.
All right. Let me commence the more robust drum roll now.
Okay, here it is, Pete. This is a really recent one, too. It is just a few weeks ago. The winner is The Holiday, a little Christmas movie, and the winner is At Snuggly Mama.
Oh, excellent.
A one-time winner of the year, and At Snuggly Mama took it. Congrats, at Snuggly Mama. You are our winner.
That's outstanding. A one-time winner with as many people who stacked the winnings. Some unreal image guessing talent this year.
Oh, yes.
In the Pony Prize. I can't believe it. That's fantastic.
I know.
We
had some people winning. I don't know how many times the At Cotton Science and Brendo 61 and At Fegfee had been. Well, At Fegfee is runner up with, at least 10 wins. The others, at least 7 or more. So it just goes to show it's such a random thing. But yes, At Snuggly Mama, and At Snuggly Mama, aside from the Pony Prize, is going to also be our next listener's choice in a few months, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait. Can't wait to see what Snuggly Mama comes up with. Should be a fun show. We've got lots of stuff coming your way. The list, I know, Andy, you're going to post the list soon, right? As we get closer through the end of the year. I'm
going to post it sometime after the Black Christmas. After this episode goes live, we'll post it on our Facebook page so everybody can see what At Snuggly Mama and what At Fegfee win for the Pony Prize this year.
Excellent. I can't wait to see, the old eBay pages that go live.
That's the Next Real Pony Prize awesome. Junk page.
There's some really good stuff in there. I guess we could talk about that next week once the winnings go live. But we had some good donations in there, and so
there is definitely some fun stuff.
We have, we do have a blot spot for the show. Ben Lott has written in with his rebound on the third Godfather movie.
Part 3 of the Godfather saga certainly has issues. I struggled with the muddled ending a bit, and I thought there was some lazy script writing. However, you're right, this might be Al Pacino's best performance in the trilogy, and something about Michael's struggle to go straight and escape the role of Godfather worked well for me. While Part 3 is clearly the worst in the series, that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. Your rank 209, my rank 115.
I think he's on our side.
I think so.
I was worried after Rogue One. He went militant in his
he went rogue, one might say.
Don't say that. But no, it's definitely. I absolutely agree, and I think there was I think if I remember, there was a contested Rochambeau in our discussion, our ranking of Godfather 3, and you're still a little bitter about that, but that may define why our rank is 209 and his rank is 115.
Stone, what is it? Stone Rock? How do I play this game again? Oh, I guess I won. Whoops.
Oh, no, we're not bitter. No, Andy, it's time. Let's do trailers. I, Andy, was delighted to see that the teaser has dropped for Blade Runner 2049. This is due to come out, sometime in 2017, late in the year, I think. But they did drop the trailer, and we do see Rick Deckard, and we do see Ryan Gosling, and we do see Wasteland, and it just rekindled everything that I love about the first Blade Runner movie. I'm actually really excited, much more excited about this, particularly now that, I've seen some of Denis Villeneuve's work. We already liked Prisoners a lot, but my goodness, after Sicario and Arrival, I'm really sold since the last time we talked about Blade Runner 2049. Writing credits this time around go to Hampton Fancher, and he comes with the story co-written with Michael Green. I don't think I know much about Michael Green. I know Hampton Fancher and David Peoples did the first Blade Runner, and there was a lot of David Peoples in the first Blade Runner, right? I mean, it was that 12 Monkeys vibe, and so I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know. I really like Hampton Fancher's other work, but there just isn't. He's much more, I think, an actor than a screenwriter. So I don't quite know what to make of this. Still, very excited to see what comes of it, and the cast looks great. The look of it is great, and I don't know, man. How did it hit you as a teaser?
Oh, it totally worked for me. I mean, I've always been a little reticent of the idea that they would even do a sequel to Blade Runner, but knowing that this is the Hollywood machine, and this is the kind of the corporate machine cranking away, churning out every possible sequel and prequel and every different thing that it can, it still piques my curiosity. The fact that some people decided, hey, let's think about this and what could we do with the sequel to Blade Runner, it does actually excite me quite a bit. I think the cast, the look, everything about it does excite me quite a bit. So I'm very interested in that. You mentioned not knowing much about Michael Green, one of the writers. If anything, something that might worry you is that he is the writer behind Green Lantern.
Oh, Andy.
I know. He's also doing the upcoming Logan and the upcoming Alien Covenant. So he's got a few things. And I guess they're remaking Murder on the Orient Express because, why not?
Well, I'm actually very interested in what they're doing with Logan. And so I think so far that has my curiosity pretty piqued.
Yeah, and he wrote some Smallville episodes and Everwood and Heroes. I mean, he's done a lot of writing and some producing too. So I can't pin much yes or no as far as what he's bringing to the table. But everything about it looks really interesting. And you're right about Villeneuve is an incredible director, and I'm really excited to see what he's going to do in this world.
And can I just add, the other thing that makes me kind of excited, I was leery at first because, the Blade Runner soundtrack I listened to probably more than any other soundtrack. And that entire Vangelis score was just amazing.
Perfect.
And
wonderful.
And yeah, it's perfect. Everything is perfect about it. And so Johansson is doing the music for this next version, and he's also behind Sicario and Prisoners and Arrival and Theory of Everything. And so I don't know if that gives me any reason to be excited. Those are all scores that I like, and I don't listen to them all that much, but I'm hoping that he brings the experience. He's Icelandic, and so there's something about that feels appropriate for this movie. So I'm going to go with it. I'm going to be excited. I'm going to choose excitement.
There you go. I like that.
Okay. Well, then let's do that. Looks like it's going to open in France October 4th. It's going to hit the US October 6th, 2017. And then Japan in November. And so we've got a couple of Eastern European release dates so far, but those are the big ones.
Well, mine is a film that it kind of makes me angry a little bit that it exists. And okay, so going into that.
Do tell.
So there's this movie is Going in Style. It's a film directed by Zach Braff and Arthur Lewis. That is it's based on the 1979 comedy drama directed by Martin Brest called Going in Style, that had George Burns, Art Carney, and Lee Strasberg as three old senior citizen friends who decide to put together a bank robbery. And so I guess the reason I'm angry, which really is, it's nonsense that I'm angry at all, but I didn't know that Going in Style existed. I started writing a heist film with a bunch of senior citizens a few years back, and then I had this whole idea and was putting it all together. And I was so excited; nobody had ever done this before. And then I heard about this movie that Zach Braff was remaking called Going in Style, and I learned all about it, and that was like my movie. And I was very disappointed that it existed. And I still have yet to go watch the original 1979 one because it hurts me too much. But I will at some point watch it, certainly, hopefully, before I watch Zach Braff's. I haven't seen anything by Zach Braff that he's directed that I've actually been very excited by. It was interesting that this is something that he picked because his other films definitely seemed about people dealing with their exploration of who they were as young people. And this is kind of the same thing, I guess. It's people exploring who they are as senior citizens and trying to figure out, how to get by with this, getting screwed over by the man, as it were. But yeah, this one we have Michael Caine, Morgan Freeman, and Alan Arkin as our three senior citizens who decide to rob a bank. And I will say it looks entertaining. It's probably something I'm going to see, but I'm still like, now I have to figure out how to write my idea so it doesn't feel like a ripoff of all these ideas. So anyway,
man,
what did you think?
You were had. This is a boondoggle. It's a creative boondoggle.
Exactly.
I'm definitely more pro Zach Braff than you are, but I'm starting to question the rationale behind my position there. I loved Garden State. I really enjoyed that. I loved everything about it. I really connected with it, and I recognize that maybe sort of where I was when I saw it. But I really enjoyed that, and I loved Scrubs. I mean, I always know him as Scrubs and his work on that show. I find him charismatic on screen. His work as a director, I haven't seen, I think, enough of the other. What has he done? Five films, something like that.
Has it even been that many?
Let's see, Garden State. Oh, he did Nightlife TV movie, Wish I Was Here, self-promotion, and then Going in Style is coming.
Okay.
In addition to the episodes, he directed 7 episodes of Scrubs.
Yeah.
So I feel like I can't really judge the rest of his work besides Garden State. I didn't actually see Wish I Was Here. Did you see that one?
Nope, that was his Kickstarter movie.
It was with Josh Gad and Ashley Greene, Kate Hudson.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I wonder how I'll connect with Going in Style. This is definitely a change for him, and I am not. This is one of those kinds of movies that I will probably like to see, late one night in the house on Netflix. Like I'm not going to intentionally go see it. It doesn't pique my interest quite that much. It looks a little bit derivative. Like I feel like I got it. I got the jokes before they did. I am not. This is not an admission of guilt. I'm tired.
I know.
So.
Mine would have been better.
Yours would have been better.
Let's just both agree to that.
Yeah. All right. When does it hit?
It opens April 7th next year, and then Germany, France, Brazil, it'll open a little later in April, but it doesn't have a lot of release dates yet, just a few countries. So we'll see how wide this one gets. It doesn't seem like something that's going to spread across the world like Rogue One.
You don't think Arkin has that kind of pull? That old Rogue One juice?
It sounds like a disease. Oh, Rogue One is spreading across the country.
Oh, Andy, this is Sergeant Nash. Are you the only one in the house?
A high school girl's been murdered. Mr. Harrison's daughter is missing. And now at the house where she lives, the other girls are getting obscene phone calls.
Yeah, what I've done is I've tapped this phone so that when it rings, it'll ring at the station house, too.
There was a little girl murdered over in the park tonight. Yes, I heard. Your phone's ringing.
Remember those idyllic scenes out of your childhood? Crisp winter nights, star bright, sleigh bells, crackling Yule logs, candlelight glistening off of shimmering Christmas trees, chestnuts roasting over open fires, carolers beneath snow-covered window ledges. Remember those. Remember them well. After Black Christmas, they'll never be the same again. Black Christmas, starring Olivia Hussey, Keir Dullea, Margot Kidder, and starring John Saxon as Lieutenant Fuller. If this movie doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight.
Black Christmas. Andy, you tricked me into watching Black Christmas. I thought this was another Medea movie. But instead, it is not. It is a horror mystery thriller directed by Bob Clark, written by Roy Moore. Stars Olivia Hussey, Keir Dullea, Margot Kidder, John Saxton, Marion Waldman, Andrea Martin et al. Yeah, those are the big ones. And it's pretty much about a mysterious bad guy who's killing everybody in a sorority house. I don't know. Is there more I need to say?
Yes.
Okay. Officially, during their Christmas break, a group of sorority girls are stalked by a stranger, and then they are killed. And that's what this movie is about. The tagline of this movie is, if this picture doesn't make your skin crawl, it's on too tight.
I want to be the guy writing tags for horror posters.
Yeah.
That's just so great.
Anyway, this film, it's unique for a number of reasons that we will get into, but neither of us had seen this film prior to this week, correct? This was a new watch for you. That
is correct.
All right. So how did it hit you on your first opportunity to watch this film, to celebrate the annual next reel ringing in of the new year and the love and heart of kith and kin?
I enjoyed it quite a bit. I really went into this not knowing what to expect at all. My wife, I can somehow managed to convince to sit next to me and watch some of it. And she actually stayed for most of it until she fell asleep. But for me, I mean, I really enjoyed the film. It had a great kind of that slasher 70s horror vibe, while also being kind of that first person stalker. And I mean, I wouldn't say I love it or anything, but I actually found it a lot more enjoyable than I was expecting.
Okay, so I don't know. Is that's not faint praise? I've got to tell you, Andy. I think we talked about how it may be that I have a latent horror vibe in me, buried in me, that is yearning to come out. This movie, I did not find a horribly, offensively terrible experience. What do you think about that?
Well, good.
Right?
That's right.
It surprised me. I found myself really kind of into it. Well, I had to watch it over 2 days because I did fall asleep the first night. But that's on me. I started too late. When I picked it up and figured out what was going on the next day, I actually found myself really into it. I had fun, and I think the thrills did what they needed to do for me. You know, it was appropriately chilling when it needed to be chilling, and I thought it was a fun play on the the babysitter's the man's inside the house urban legend. Reading into the film and learning about the connections that it has to and was inspired by some real life murders in Montreal and the connections it has to the inconvenient connection to TV release to the Ted Bundy killings. I mean, it's just got some storied history to it. So, but I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. Why is this film unique for us? Why is it unique in its genre?
There are a few things. Bob Clark, who directed this, he really was trying to pull the depiction of college students away from what had been so popular in the decades before, which is really kind of that, as he describes it, that beach blanket bingo type of portrayal. he wanted to do something that felt a lot more authentic to college students, and he really kind of pushed for that. And that's kind of how these students ended up getting written and reworked by him with Roy Moore's script.
Well, and what was the result? I mean, what did we see on screen that was a result of that exploration?
I think you had students who were getting drunk, who talked about their screwing around and stuff like that, possibly getting pregnant. These are not the sorts of characters that you would have ever seen in Beach Blanket Bingo. It wasn't just the rah go college sort of kids. I mean, they were sorority, but they were partying, and they were likely doing drugs and enjoying themselves quite a bit. And so that's something that was kind of fresh, I guess, for the time.
And they were sort of listless. I think that was another thing that I walked out of. Like they were sort of rudderless, and I think that was, prior to this point, they were, where we would see college on screen. It was always really strange to find a rudderless person, in that capacity. Everybody really kind of was doing the school thing in order to go be successful and become a statistic.
Yeah, and even so far as I thought it was really interesting to depict Peter as this music student who we don't know much about him, but you see him doing this. I guess it would be kind of a big final or something where he's playing some intense piece of music. And that's really kind of all we see. He seems to kind of do okay, but is he messing up? It's hard to tell because the music is kind of a discordant type of piece anyway. So I don't really know. But then the next thing you see him coming in after hours and destroying the piano. And, that's all you really get of this kind of darker side of this character. And it's this type of student who isn't necessarily clicking with what they're trying to do, and might, be somebody who does some bad things after hours, like destroying a piano. I thought that was a really interesting aspect to that character. And, all the characters had those kind of elements to them.
I think that's a great point. And I actually made that note too about Peter, that his story is actually one that I would be interested in seeing, on its own, right? Outside of the sort of bench strength character and possible whodunit, murderer in this kind of a film. Like watching him struggle with discovering that he's actually sort of rudderless, or kind of picking up a rudder and realizing it's not the one that he thought he had, right? I thought that was an interesting story. I think you can say that about just about all the characters on screen, which is, I found really unique.
All the characters have something interesting, whether it's the house mom who's got her secret stashes of booze everywhere. They all have really
riot.
Oh, she's great. They all have really interesting little quirks. Like I loved it's just kind of a random touch, but just the fact that Margot Kidder's character, who really kind of just seems like, just the ultimate party girl and just the real kind of the naughty one, that she collects like little glass unicorns, and they're all like sitting on her shelf in her room. That was like such a strange little touch, but it was like, it really kind of showed a different side to that character that I would never have expected. And then of course she gets killed with her glass unicorn, which was kind of funny. But
I have always said that when I see glass unicorn collections, I always look at the purveyor and I say, those will be your undoing. They never believe me, and now we know why.
Exactly. Do you know a lot of people with glass unicorn collections, Pete?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Oh,
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying?
No, I like how all the characters have these moments. And even our protagonist, Jess, I mean, she's pregnant and she wants an abortion, and she doesn't really love the guy she's with. I mean, there were just some really interesting character moments with all of these different people that we meet throughout the film. Going even further, we've got, Lieutenant Fuller, played by John Saxon. There's this strange like little comedy bit going on in his office between him and the sergeant up at the front, and then the laughing detective who just always seems to kind of laugh at everything that the guy up front is doing, and Fuller is always just like, don't laugh, and it is just, it was a strange little moment, but it created such great chemistry and authenticity. And, we talk about on the show quite a bit, this whole idea of creating this world and the world building. And sometimes this is what it takes to just fully build a world, is just really nice detail to characters that make me feel like this is an authentic setting.
To whom do we owe credit for that? Have you had a chance to read the script, the Roy Moore script? What do we think of him as a writer?
So Roy Moore, he wrote this original script called The Babysitter, based on this whole urban legend of the babysitter and the man upstairs. He's in the house, that whole concept. People didn't click with it. They couldn't sell it at all. And so the producers, they ended up having Timothy Bond do some rewrites and retitled it as Stop Me. That put it into this university setting, and that's kind of the script that Bob Moore got when he came on to it. And he ended up continuing to work with it, is my understanding. I'm not sure if he was working with Bond or Moore as he kind of continued reworking it on his own as he was gearing up to make it. But he's the one who kind of added a lot of little character touches. That's my understanding. And the actors, he's a director who doesn't shy away from letting the actors come up with little bits for their characters and everything. So I think, I don't know, I feel like Roy Moore brought the concept of, the killer in the house to the script. Timothy Bond and Bob Clark, my interpretation of all this is that they likely are the ones who kind of helped build the world and actually make this university and all these characters feel so real.
This film is credited as one of the first, if not the first, of the unknown or unresolved killer shtick, right? It obviously influenced many films since, but this one is considered one of the very first, where there is an anonymous stalker. We don't know the backstory of this stalker, and it is never resolved by the end of the film. How expert do you find this film in building the intrigue around that concept, and how rewarding do you feel like it is at the end?
I think they do a great job with it. Bob Clark, along with his actor that he brought in to play this character, Billy. And Bob kind of wrote some of the lines for Billy, but then it sounds like they did a lot of improv, just coming up with these different voices for Billy and kind of the story. It sounded like Bob really had a good story for what he thought of as Billy, like Billy and his sister Agnes, and Billy might have killed his parents. Bob is very elusive about a lot of the details, but he does give you some things. He won't say like if they killed the parents or what happened, but there's this kind of dark backstory with this character, Billy. And the fact that we only ever hear him, I mean, he kind of talks to himself. And so when you're in the POV camera, you kind of hear him mumbling and stuff like that. And when he's sitting in the attic and rocking the chair with the suffocated girl in it and things like that. And he's going on and saying all these real weird, creepy things. Or when he's on the phone, doing his phone stalking with Jess and the rest of the sorority girls. The fact that it's all done through this kind of mentally unstable person who talks to himself and makes these phone calls ends up really helping sell this whole concept, I think. I think otherwise it would have been a little more difficult to sell it, but I think it works really well in the context here. And, there's only a few moments where I feel like I might not have completely bought into some of the stuff, like when Jess realizes what's happening and she picks up the fire poker and she sees him and he races down the stairs to get her and he grabs her by the hair and all that. I feel like, she might have been in a place to recognize him or at least see that it's not Peter.
Yes.
That's the one moment where I'm like, gosh, she was awfully close to the guy. She very likely could have at least been able to tell. But for the most part, I think Bob really did a really good job of using that POV style here.
And do you feel like the ending was rewarding to you? Like just the fact that we end the film not knowing who did it, and therefore no spoiler. It was interesting to read that the Warner executives wanted Bob to resolve the ending, and so it was actually the executive team that pitched that Clark offered our fur-clad boyfriend Chris to show up and say, Agnes, don't tell them what we did, before killing her. And Clark won, leaving it actually unresolved in the end. So we don't know who killed all these people. You feel like it was rewarding for you as a viewer?
I love that. The fact that it ends that way, is really brazen. And I think that that's what is exciting about some horror films, is that you don't get that resolution. You walk out of the theater still feeling uncomfortable. And that's, I think, what a great horror movie can do. By having that resolution, it kind of puts you in a place where you're like, okay, everything's okay now. I think that this is a great element that horror filmmakers have been using time and time again. I mean, we've seen it in Carrie, which we've talked about on the show, and how Brian De Palma has that great scare moment right at the end. The denouement really kind of just, gets you on the edge of your seat again, just as it kicks you out of the theater. And that's exactly what he does here with that last moment where you realize Peter wasn't the killer. The killer is still on the loose. He's sitting upstairs. Jess is in the house all by herself and likely not going to be alive much longer as the phone rings us out of the credits. So I loved it.
I actually did too. I really liked the way this one was done, that it wasn't, that the film didn't end on a jump scare. It ended on this sort of burning, kind of seething horror, that he's up in the attic and the phone is ringing and she is unconscious in bed and no one is in the house now, right? No one's in the house. She's completely alone. And I found that really, that's a great terror moment. I think one of the things that I was a little bit disappointed by is the killer's point of view was not universal, right? I wanted to be, as soon as they established the killer POV gimmick, I wanted to play that out 100% of the film. And there are enough sequences where as soon as we cut to something with the killer, it's not POV. I started to find that distracting.
Like what's an example for you?
Well, there are a couple of moments in the chase scene at the end. There are a couple of very brief moments where the killer walks in front of his own camera, like just a shadow of the killer in front of the camera, so you can tell actually that we're not POV anymore. We're behind the killer, and that sort of bugged me. The only time I found they could get away with it is when we pivot from the perspective of another character onto like the brightly lit eye through a crack in the door or something like that. I thought that was great stuff. But there were some moments that I thought were interesting that they didn't leave it POV, that didn't feel like it would take anything away to leave it POV.
That reminds me a little bit of, the eye was so creepy, it totally reminds me a little bit of Christopher Plummer's creepy eyes in The Silent Partner, or Speakeasy a while back. Although this one almost is creepier because it's just the one eye looking at her through the crack between the door and the door jamb. That was a pretty creepy eye.
There's an interesting thing about that eye. They made a big deal showing us the eye, and there's a sequence where she is upstairs and she gets a good look at the eye right through the door, because it shows her seeing the eye. We see her see the eye. Then the eye looks back at her. Then she jams the door because the killer is behind the door and she's on the other side of it. She jams the door and we hear the killer start screaming and she runs downstairs. And that's what ends up, getting her down into the cellar.
Right.
And they made such a big point to show the eye and show the color of the eye, the sort of amber color of the eye, is bloodshot. It's a pretty creepy eye. Then we see Peter mysteriously deciding that the only place that Jess must be is in the basement. Right? I don't understand that at all. But he's been set up as one potential killer, and she now has the fireplace poker. But then, just in terms of how they cut this sequence together, they do enough of these sort of crash like cuts into the face to show us the eyes. And the eyes are so obviously different than the eye of the killer that it's almost like they're trying to demonstrate to us that she is examining the eye, and yet she ends up killing him.
Yeah.
She ends up killing Peter, and so she doesn't see that the eyes are different. But we already knew the eyes were different, and I felt like that was out of context. She should have known the eyes were different.
I guess you were paying closer attention to his eyes, because I wasn't paying attention to the fact that they were actually different from the killer's eyes. I missed that entirely. But I thought I really enjoyed the way they set this whole thing up, with her killing him and never really revealing if he was the killer or not until that last moment. We don't know that the killer is still on the loose. And I thought that was a really clever story element here.
I did too, and it's actually one of my favorite choices to cut that experience in a horror movie, to not show her killing him and leave that hanging open. It honestly, I thought to myself, this could go either way. this really could go either way. I would absolutely buy it if he kills her here. I would absolutely buy it if he's suddenly on the team and they're searching for the killer together. And therefore, I was actually surprised to see that she killed him in the process, now making her a murderer. I mean, she is drugged and put in that bed a murderer, and that seemed to be handled fairly lightly. Interesting first shot, last shot.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great example of a first shot, last shot. I mean, it's essentially the same shot. You know, we start on a long shot of the sorority house under the credits. We hear the wind blowing. We've got this creepy choral version of Silent Night. There's a silhouette of someone then walking across the frame, and then we cut into the front door. The girls come home, and then our third shot, we're into the POV killer shot as he's casing the house and kind of wandering around, looking up toward the windows up at the top.
And the last shot we get, we're inside the house. We're in the third floor in the attic, and we see Mrs. Mack hanging by the hook in the attic. We see Claire dead with the bag still over her head in the foreground, and we slowly pull out and realize that we're actually outside the house. We pull out of the attic window. We are across the street. There's a dog barking in the distance. We see the cop standing on the front stoop waiting for the coroner to show up. We assume something like that. And then the phone rings as we get wider and wider and wider on this house. Eventually, we pretty much line up. It's a high angle instead of a low angle that was on the in the first shot. But the credits roll over this shot of the house. The thing I love about it symbolically, it doesn't really mean anything to me in terms of, the house or the narrative of the story. But what it does do is it creates a fairy tale. It feels very much like, like a classic Christmas story where, you might open on a gingerbread house, or you might open, or, it's like a book opens on screen, it's that kind of an experience. And what's between the pages of that book is horrific, but the book itself, I think, gives me a nice fairy tale feeling.
That's a great way to describe it, because the house definitely has what would otherwise be seen as a really kind of an old beauty. But here, the way that Clark and his team shoot it, it is a really creepy looking old house. I mean, it's this dark house, and it's always in just the blackest night. Just the way they lit it, everything is so dark and black, which I just love. But yeah, it's this sense of this foreboding house that even after you go through the entire story, you get to this place at the end where it's like, no matter what, you're not going to leave this house okay. And I think that's just a fun way to spin it here.
Yeah, even the other end of that, which is, no matter what, the house is okay. Right. We're going to do some horrible things inside it, but this house is still beautiful. There's something kind of, subversively peaceful about that. I thought that was great. Let's talk about the cast.
Yes, Karen Hazard was our casting director for this one, and
she landed Olivia Hussey as Jess. This ain't no Juliet, baby.
Oh my!
I don't know. I don't know much about I never saw the 68.
You didn't? You weren't made to watch that in high school?
No, I actually was not. So this was the Franco Zeffirelli adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. Olivia Hussey was 15, 16.
Truly the most buxom Juliet I've seen.
Was she? I have not seen it. What do we learn from Olivia Hussey as Jess, nay Juliet?
She's got an interesting accent, which I think is great. But she's a really interesting choice for the role here. She's a beauty. She's just kind of a natural beauty. And like I said earlier, she's our protagonist, but she also happens to have gotten pregnant with her boyfriend, who she doesn't really love. I mean, she kind of likes him, but it's that college relationship where she's like, I mean, he wants to marry her, but she's like, I don't think I want to be with you. I don't think I want to have that life. I don't want to have this baby. And, I'm still trying to figure things out. And there was something really nice that Olivia Hussey brought to that role. I enjoyed her in this character, and she really takes getting tormented really well.
She does. She does. She's Argentinian. You mentioned her accent. I would not have pegged Argentina as her country of origin by her accent. It is a
No, I
really
wouldn't
interesting
either.
accent. But she's since gone on to do a lot of voice work. She's done a bunch of work in what I would call, sort of biblical films, right? She's done a lot of stories from the Bible since then, and yet her voice work is all like Batman Beyond and Star Wars Rogue Squadron and Star Wars The Old Republic video game, and I don't know why I find that amusing. According to Margot Kidder, I thought this was a funny quote. Kidder says that Olivia was obsessed with the idea of falling in love with Paul McCartney through her psychic. Just sounds about right.
It's funny hearing Olivia and Margot talk about each other. They don't sound like they quite got along. They sound really nice about each other, but Olivia's just like, oh yeah, I didn't get to know Margot very well. She was very quiet. And Margot is just like, yeah, Olivia, she was really into Paul McCartney and kind of that whole thing. And she was, she had been in some big projects, so she kind of had that sort of, star attitude, but, trying to figure it out still. And I loved her. It's just, she was, they it seemed like an interesting pair of those two.
It kind of felt like a sorority sister relationship to me.
Yes. I think it works well for that on screen.
Keir was Peter. I would not have been able to place Peter without seeing the name and looking at his credits. I am sort of blown away that I didn't pick the other film that he is known for.
Oh yeah. It's funny. My wife, we started this and the Blu-ray has the menu play and it's just got a bunch of scenes from it. And she glanced, it has a shot of him destroying the piano. And she's like, does this have Viggo Mortensen in it? It's just like, no, that's not Viggo Mortensen. This was made much longer ago. But he did have kind of that, look, definitely kind of that long, scraggly hair sort of look that I think it could work as a Viggo Mortensen. But yeah, Keir is one of those actors that I haven't seen in a whole heck of a lot, but he sure made an impression in 2001.
He sure did. Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
Oh, yes.
As David Bowman in 2001. He was in, I think he played the granddad in Infinitely Polar Bear, the Mark Ruffalo movie, recently. And so, I mean, it's nice that he's still out there working. And he was in Space Station 76, which I think we may have done a trailer pick of. I haven't seen it. It was like a black comedy in space. So I don't know what to make of that. I had said about Margot Kidder that she's arguably the most notable face today, but certainly not at the time.
It's interesting. Yeah, definitely not at the time. I think, Olivia, Hussey, Keir, both of those definitely had some pretty big credits at the time. And even Margot had some big credits. I mean, she had just been in Brian De Palma's Sisters the year before this. But certainly now, I guess it's a genre thing, though. It really depends on which genre you're coming from. If you're coming from the horror genre, you might say that John Saxon might be the one that's most recognizable because he was in Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, he's been in so many things. You might say Keir if you're a real sci-fi fan because of 2001, or Olivia because of Romeo and Juliet. It's an interesting mix of a cast of people who are well known in certain genres.
Boy, that's the truth. Kidder, I think, plays an admirable drunk, really convincing drunk, especially the line where she falls back on the couch and she's laughing and she starts talking and she almost throws up. That was about the most believable sort of micro drunk expression that I remember seeing on screen.
Is that what she's talking about, turtles, or was that a different conversation?
Yeah. It was right after that, right?
Oh, so
funny. Womp. I thought she was terrific. I was surprised she actually didn't. When I started the movie, just because she is, for me, that memorable face, I expected her to be our central protagonist, and she very clearly is not.
Nope.
Again, unicorns undoing, lest we forget. You already mentioned John Saxon as Lieutenant Ken Fuller. He is, I don't know, he's more than that guy, right? He's not quite an A-lister. He's definitely in that gray area, but a crazy recognizable face, over 200 credits. And you already mentioned Nancy's dad in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, I think he's great here. He does a great job with this role. And I mean, he is one of those, he is that guy, but yeah, there's something about him that really makes him stand out. So he's a little bit more than a that guy, like you said. I think he really is enjoyable here. And I like I said, I loved his whole team. They had such a great vibe.
His whole team, it was very believable to see him in this role as a lieutenant, the way he interacted with these other guys in the department, the way he, spoke to Sergeant Nash. I thought he was terrific. And the way he kind of plotted through the investigation, dealing with the phone, tracing the phone calls. I thought he was just really believable and sort of owned the role there in spite of all the chaos around him. I thought he was great. Marion Waldman as Mrs. Mack. Now, I don't really have anything to say about Marion Waldman, but given the series we wrapped up a series ago, I felt it appropriate to at least mention that this part was originally offered of the house mother to Bette Davis.
Interesting. It would have fit kind of the direction her career ended up going as she kind of proceeded after whatever happened to Baby Jane. So
I think so too.
That would have been really interesting.
She could have brought really Baby Jane to this movie and it would have been fine.
I would love to have tied Bette Davis into this series. Man, getting hooked like that, it's pretty brutal. And both of those first couple deaths were pretty horrific. And man, what a way to go.
Those houses, I don't know. I guess I don't, truck in those kinds of old houses, but I don't remember ever seeing a meat hook quite of that size on a pulley quite of that size in a home, in like a kid home.
You should come over and look at my attic.
Yeah. Oh, good. That'll be a good time.
Yeah.
Why do you say things like that? I'm new to this horror thing. Just shut up. Andrea Martin is Phil, another one of the sorority sisters. The role was originally offered to Gilda Radner. She dropped out due to SNL commitments, short of actually starting shooting. So Andrea Martin comes in. And Andrea Martin is of note because she is the only actress to join the remake of Black Christmas that they did in 2006.
I didn't, there wasn't a whole lot to her. I mean, I thought she was fine. But her part was awfully tiny. So I don't really have much to say, but I still enjoyed her for her parts that she had here.
She is one of those incredibly prolific actors. She's got 154 credits, lots of television, lots of voice work. She is everywhere. She does have a very unique voice. IMDb pegs her top 4 as SCTV, Wag the Dog, Anastasia, and My Big Fat Greek Wedding. She was in the whole series of that as Aunt Vula. Let's talk about getting it made.
Yeah, I mean, we already said this was kind of a small film that Bob Clark kind of took this script that these producers had found and they reworked it a little bit, but they didn't have much money. It was a very low budget project, but they got it made. I think it was like 9 or 10 weeks as far as getting the production done, and so they really just had to kind of crank through it and make it happen quickly. But they were shooting this. It sounds like winter, either the end of 73 or the beginning of 74, and actually it might have started the end of 73 and then ran into 74, shooting over the winter. And they said it was awfully cold to film up there, but just to kind of keep that authenticity. And then, Bob Clark had Reginald Morris on as the cinematographer. And, I think that Morris and his camera operator, Bert Dunk, really kind of are the ones who are credited with kind of coming up with this whole stalker cam. I mean, it sounds like it might have been used in a film before this. Bob Clark really, he feels like in conversations, he feels like he had remembered seeing a film that had a tiny bit of that, like that kind of stalker POV camera, but he was not able to remember what it was. And so for all intents and purposes, I mean, he kind of stole it for this, but it seems like this is kind of the origin of really creating a killer character where the entire film, when they are on screen, you're looking at it from their point of view. To the point where they designed this whole hands-free rig, so Bert Dunk, the camera operator, could have this camera mounted on his shoulders, but use his own hands. So when you're seeing him climbing up the trellis outside of the house, that's actually Bert, the camera operator, climbing up the trellis to kind of create that scene. Or when he's wrapping the plastic around the girl's head. It's him wrapping her head with plastic. So
The stalker cam was great. You noticed some split diopter work.
Yes, gotta love it when directors throw that trick in. It's fun to see, and every time I see a split diopter, I just find it really fascinating that they actually worked to construct the shot in such a way where you would have those two different depths of fields. So it's always interesting, even when one of them is like the back of Jess's head as she's talking to Margot's character Barb. You're looking at the back of Olivia's lovely hair, all of it perfectly focused, with the split diopter then revealing Margot behind her as they have a conversation. It's like, it has a really interesting use of split diopter.
Production designed by Karen Bromley. This looked like a perfectly suitable sorority house.
Yeah, and apparently the actual house was quite small. So I thought they did an effective job of making it feel spacious, or at least spacious enough for all of the big scenes, because it does start actually feeling claustrophobic as we get toward the end.
It sure does, especially that last scene. There's a wonderful long tracking shot, where first of all, it does a complete sort of rotation around the upstairs hallway, and you actually see for the first time the proximity of all the girls' bedrooms to the attic, the ladder going up to the attic. I thought that was a great reveal. And then the stairway down to the living area. So you get a sense of just how small the house is, which actually sort of pulls back the curtain on some of the way they handled sound. It should have been, it's maybe less believable as a result of that shot when they're yelling for one another and can't hear one another and assume they're sleeping. They were yelling really loud. And so, I think, I don't know, I thought that was interesting, but
well, you have to factor into
the
thickness of walls in this era of building.
You're right. And not the completely open atrium stairwell that leads right up to the doorwell. You're right.
Exactly.
You're right. I yield to the gentleman from Arizona. We already mentioned editing, Stan Cole, some great, horror cuts.
Yeah, it's fun seeing those cuts, across the scene when you're going from like when Mrs. Mack gets killed, and she screams, but just as she starts screaming, you cut to the taxi driver knocking at the door, screaming hello. They've got that weird like magnifying glass like viewer to see who's on the other side of the door, on their door, and you kind of see that weird shot through that magnifying glass of him as he's kind of screaming, hey, like hello, hey, as he's trying to get somebody to answer the door. Likewise, there's a great cut when somebody else screams later, and as they open their mouth to scream, you hear the phone ringing, and then you cut to the phone actually ringing. I mean, it's just some fun use of techniques like that. I thought that Stan Cole really, and he and Bob Clark had some fun with this.
I think so too. And the sound too, the Foley in particular, was mixed so well. I think that we talk about the music was crazy with Carl Zitterer and all the cool things he did, tying forks and combs and knives to piano strings to warp the keys for the score, and then, slow it down and alter it on tape later. But there was a creaking house sound. Do you know this sound? The creaking step.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, that was just awesome and so scary. It was a wonderful use of just wood on wood that was so subtle, but then you just can't unhear it. And I've been hearing it in my house all day long.
That's because somebody's in your attic with a big meat hook on a pulley.
It could be. I don't even know what's up there. I know some things we got for our wedding, 20 years ago are still up there. Yeah. That's maybe what they're living off of, a punch bowl.
Yep, exactly.
With a head in it. Awards? Did it win anything, Andy? Was it remade 1,000 times?
It definitely did get a remake. It's interesting for a film that, I guess it's one of those things. It was a film that didn't garner a huge following until much later. It got a few awards. The Canadian Film Awards, weirdly, I'm curious. I have to look and see what it was up against. But it won the Best Performance by a Lead Actress for Margot Kidder. It's one of those weird ones where it's like for this and for A Quiet Day in Belfast. So she won it for the two films. And then Best Sound Editing by Kenneth Healy-Ray. It was also nominated for Best Horror Film by the Academy of Science Fiction and Fantasy and Horror Films. So, it was kind of recognized in a few different places, but it's not exactly what you call a horror film. But as far as the sequels and remakes, this is one that it's like, I'm kind of surprised that it didn't end up getting a sequel, but maybe sequels just hadn't kicked in. I mean, this was just the year of Godfather Part 2, so they weren't into this whole numbering thing yet. People were just getting used to it, right?
Right.
But it just strikes me that, even 10 years later, they didn't come out with Black Christmas 2, The Return of Billy, or something like that, when they so easily could have. And it wasn't until 2006 that they actually did a remake for it, which is just nuts.
Yeah, that really surprised me. Have you seen the remake?
I didn't. I heard it was pretty bad. But after watching this, I'm kind of curious about it. I know Bob Clark produced it, and my understanding of hearing him talk about it, he kind of worked with kind of the storytellers, and they wanted to really do a lot more of building in the story of Billy and his sister Agnes and kind of the whole backstory, and maybe even tying in some of the other characters. I mean, that's something that I think some of the people involved with this film mentioned, is that, Chris kind of disappears pretty readily. What if maybe Chris was kind of involved in the murders? And my understanding is that Chris might get tied into the crime in the remake. But I don't know. I'm torn if it's actually worth my time or not.
I did watch the trailer, and boy, it feels like they wrapped a lot up. It was very much the ingenue of 2006 film. It was like Michelle Trachtenberg and Lacey Chabert and Andrea Black. We already mentioned is back. But when you just watch the trailer, they talk about the killings, and the whole reason that the killer is coming back to the house is because the sorority house is the house where he killed his family the first time and went to jail, and now he's back to kill everybody else again. And there's history. You see, they unravel all the stuff that you think that they didn't unravel the first time. It feels not rewarding after you've just sort of steadied yourself for the fact that this movie doesn't, the film we're talking about doesn't actually resolve. I'm okay not knowing.
And that's, I think, a big detriment to the remake. I mean, it feels very, very expected to now kind of reveal everything and give us answers to all these questions that the first one leaves us with. But what makes the first one so great is it leaves us with those questions and it doesn't answer those things.
How did it do at the box office?
Well, Black Christmas was definitely made on the cheap, like I said, costing only about $620,000 at the time, which is just over $3 million in today's dollars. Just for comparison's sake, Godfather 2, which was released the same year, cost almost 21 times that amount of money.
Oh, wow.
Yes. This was a Canadian production. The movie was released in Canada first, opening mid-October 1974. And as I mentioned a few weeks back, it did open in the U.S. on December 20th, opposite The Godfather 2 and The Man with the Golden Gun. For the type of movie it is, made on the budget they had, it did well for itself. It ended up making just over $4 million at the box office, which equates to almost $20 million in today's dollars. That puts it at an adjusted profit per finished minute of just over $180,000. And let the record state that with such a small budget, this movie actually did better than Godfather Parts 2 and 3 when you look at the profit per cost margin.
I can't believe it's even in the same conversation as Godfather Parts 2 and 3.
Before we rank it, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Did Billy kill the little girl in the park? Or was that just a weird coincidence?
I thought that was a weird coincidence, but okay. Since you said that, this was the other thing that I was thinking about. And the reason I wrote this in the first shot is we actually see the person cross the frame in front of us, which I am left to assume that was Billy coming to the house for the first time. So I did make the connection between Billy when he was outside of the house. Like, that's when he could have killed the little girl, like on his way.
Like she sees him and so he kills her?
Yeah, so he didn't make a very strong connection there, but why else is it in the film?
Yeah, it was weird because I was like, why is that? I mean, it's an interesting element and it certainly kind of adds to kind of the creepiness and it works to help get people out of the house.
Yeah.
But it was a strange little element to have. And what a weird coincidence that there's, two killers out at the same time. So
because if they didn't, I mean, everybody was already out of the house. They were looking for Jess. Or Claire, right? They were already out of the house. We didn't need the other murder.
But wasn't it weird that Claire's father, I mean, it's not weird that he hangs around so much, but it got to a point where some of it was so weird that he was like hanging out with Barb as he was talking drunk about turtles and all that. And I was just like, this is the guy whose father, his daughter is missing. And here he is, having these weird conversations. And then he's there at the end with Jess as she's been drugged and he's there with the cops. I'm like, why is he there? And then I got convinced, oh man, they're going to leave and it's going to be revealed that he is Billy and that he actually killed his daughter, which of course none of that ended up happening because he left. But he was such a perplexing character to me that I just had to bring that up because it was strangely written.
I thought he was very strangely written. They had him in scenes where he just didn't belong. And when he was in scenes where he did belong, he was so unemotional about the entire experience that I had such a hard time taking him seriously. And he was not a comic character, right? His daughter is missing and he wants to be a part of it, but he was terrible.
Yeah, it was a strange element to the film. That is sure.
Andy, I think we should rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/the next reel. You can scroll down right in your show notes. I put a handy link right for you. Just tap the Flickchart button link right there, and it will take you right over to the website where you can add it to your very own catalog. Let's see how it does.
All right, Black Christmas or Mad Max?
Well, I'm pretty sure it's Mad Max.
I'm going with Mad Max, yes.
Okay.
Black Christmas or The Sandlot?
I think you are going with you're going with Black Christmas.
I'm actually kind of torn on this one because I really did enjoy Black Christmas quite a bit. And, I don't have a problem with putting horror films on from time to time like you do. But I still might go with The Sandlot because it's just a very easy film to just put on and just kind of let flow as I'm doing things or whatever. So I think I'm going to go with Sandlot, actually.
I'm also going to go with The Sandlot.
Black Christmas or Bull Durham?
This puts me in a bind. I think we're both in a bind, but for different reasons.
I don't think I'm really in a bind. I enjoy Bull Durham, but there was something about Black Christmas that I really kind of enjoyed. And I honestly feel like maybe it's just because of the Christmas nature of it. I actually might put Black Christmas on more often just because of the fact that I can so easily put it on at Christmas time.
Okay. I think I am probably Black Christmas.
All right. Black Christmas or Troll Hunter?
Troll Hunter.
Yeah, I'm going to say Troll Hunter.
That's easy.
That's a fun one. Black Christmas or Christine? I ended up having more problems with Christine than I had remembered. And so while it's an entertaining film, I still have issues with it. I think I'm going to pick Black Christmas.
I was going to say, this is another one that's super easy for me. It's Black Christmas. Christine was not the movie I remembered.
Next up, Black Christmas or The Little Foxes. Back to Bette Davis. Black Christmas for me.
Little Foxes.
If it was any of her other films, I would have probably picked it. But over Little Foxes, I'll pick Black Christmas.
I feel like I feel like Little Foxes. That has stuck with me a little bit more, just from a cultural sort of interpretive perspective. I really that's stuck in my teeth, Andy. I think we might have to go to the mat on this one.
Let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Scissors.
Oh,
crushed.
Bette Davis just crushed you.
Bette Davis crushed me. All right. Next up, we have Black Christmas or the recent remake of The Magnificent Seven. I'm Black Christmas.
I'm Black Christmas. Andy, what is going on?
Hey, I like this, Pete. I like this side of you.
Wow.
All right, man. Well, that leaves us at 233 on our chart.
It's in the 200s. Pretty healthily in the 200s.
It took a stumble from the first couple, but it ended up being okay. It's in an okay place, I think. It's a really fun, entertaining film that I certainly would watch again. It's funny that we didn't mention the U.S. release version of it was Silent Night, Evil Night, but it not to be confused with the Santa Claus killer movie, Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Where would you rank those two, Black Christmas and Silent Night, Deadly Night, Andy?
I've never seen Silent Night, Deadly Night, but I think we should put it on our list for next Christmas.
It's on there. That's good. I am willing to check it out, Andy. That's a
that's so
new
funny.
thing for me. What does this do for your Letterboxd ranking?
This is a tricky one because I think there are some issues I have with the film, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. So I'm sitting at a 3.5. I think that's where I'm going to land. 3.5 out of 5.
You know, I was going to put it at 2.5, so that gives it a solid 3. What do you think?
All right, I say that's okay.
We have a 3-star horror movie.
There you go.
Love Pete. Where do we go from here as we ring in the new year?
We're going to kick off the new year with an Eddie Murphy series, which is going to be a lot of fun. We're starting with Trading Places because it does have a tiny tie-in to New Year's. So that's kind of our New Year's film. And then we're going to do Beverly Hills Cop, which is going to be a lot of fun, and end the series with Coming to America, a great little dose of Murphy in the 80s.
That was a good time for Eddie Murphy.
It's going to be a fun series.
I think so, too. All right, Andy. Well, this has been exhausting, and now I have to actually go sleep with the lights on. But you know, I do have to go to bed.
But Pete, wait. Isn't your bed in the attic?
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
Oh, and I think horror movies are particularly juicy for the Amazon critique.
Oh, it's always fun.
Mine is titled Dark and Ugly, and it comes to us from Amazon reviewer Rock Hard in 2013. Rock says, "This movie is not even close to being a mild slasher. You'd be better served watching A Nightmare on Elm Street. This movie is just plain sick and disgusting to watch. It's the total opposite of White Christmas. This movie should have been called Halloween Hell. Sometimes I wonder what goes through the minds of these screenwriters." The movie begins with the camera focusing on the 5 pointed stars on the building and on the building number, which is 6. Put the 2 stars and the number together, and what do you get? The movie also gave screen time to drunkenness, sexual graphics, and expressions. The sicko in the film speaks in different nerve-wracking voices, so you also have possession in this freak flick. Another thing you might want to know is that there's an underlying theme, abortion. This film was released in 1974, a year after abortion was legalized. It focuses on the right of the woman to have an abortion regardless of what the man thinks, wants, or what is right. And in very deadly terms, it states that if you're against abortion, you deserve to die. These are all unsettling and purposely crafted messages within an inhuman movie. It is not to be watched during the Christmas season, especially with loved ones and family. In fact, if you can avoid it, it's not to be watched at all. But if you're disposed to watch it, not without a high degree of perturbation, nausea, and inclination to jettison the entire contents of your stomach and intestines. Bluntly speaking, this movie is about evil and death. Fair warning.
Wow. Well, at least Rock has a point of view.
It seems like he was looking for something that was less Black Christmas and more White Christmas. I feel it. Now I don't want to like bury myself in subtext. I'm just saying my gut is telling me this movie was not made for Rock.
I like that one of the people commenting on Rock's review even said, "I would imagine that Black Christmas would in fact be the opposite of White Christmas."
It is,
just to make it clear.
Fact,
it's
the
pretty
total
black and
opposite.
It's pretty black and white, I would say.
What's yours?
I have a 1 star by Denise R. Hodges, who says, "A waste of time." I love these reviews written in all caps. "I searched the web for the all-time scariest movie. This was at the top. What a joke! In fact, it was not as I expected. The Evil Dead was way better than this."
And she screamed it.
And she screamed it at me. Exactly. Thank you, Denise.
There is nothing warmer than Amazon.com during the holidays, don't you think?
Oh, with a cup of apple cider. Makes me happy.
Thanks, Amazon. It is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, I know, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
In Season 6, our Disease Films series had adaptations like The Omega Man, based on I Am Legend, The Andromeda Strain, Children of Men, and Blindness.
I Am Legend is so much better than The Omega Man.
What about the Will Smith version?
Don't get me started.
For our This Is Real Life Jack series, we talked Black Hawk Down and Seabiscuit, some great true stories based on fantastic books.
And we had more listeners' choices like The Fly, The Emigrants, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
You just did a series on The Fly on the Sitting in the Dark podcast. Did you read the original material?
Wasn't watching every Fly movie enough?
Our Big Betty Davis series featured adaptations like The Little Foxes, Now Voyager, All About Eve, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Are you calling Betty Davis big?
Only in personality and force.
She is a force to be reckoned with.
We talked about the entire The Godfather trilogy, of course. Iconic page to screen, even if it is just the one Mario Puzo book. I wonder if Coppola will ever make The Sicilian.
We also had some Zhang Yimou adaptations with Judo and Raise the Red Lantern. Absolutely gorgeous movies.
And don't forget the Hughes Brothers series with From Hell, based on the graphic novel. Brilliant material.
Kelly Reichardt gave us Wendy and Lucy and Certain Women, adapted from short stories.
Plus more Hayao Miyazaki as we tackled Howl's Moving Castle.
Find all these books and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every purchase supports the show.
Get the full list of adapted films that we've covered at thenextreel.com/originals and start your next read today.